When the transistor, arguably the most important invention of the 20th century, was invented at Bell Labs at the tail end of 1947, there was one problem that remained unsolved: what to call such an important device. Though members of the lab staff were aware of the transistor's existence, it would be months before the public would hear of it. That would happen when the patents were filed and the press materials released. As the date drew closer, it became increasingly clear that this particular invention really needed a great name. The descriptive terms that were floating around the labs, like semiconductor triode or surface states amplifier, just wouldn't cut it. One of the device's inventors, Walter Brattain, asked his friend and fellow lab scientist John R. Pierce what he thought it should be called. Pierce came up with transistor, based on the root concepts of transconductance and variable resistance.
The discovery of the transistor is the result of scientific research. Research by men of insight who sought to understand the atomic structure and electrical behavior of semiconductors, which had intrigued them for years. For example, electrical conductivity of semiconductors like germanium lies somewhere between that of good conductors like copper and good insulators like rubber. Conductivity of most semiconductors, like germanium, increases when they are exposed to light. And when a metal, like this copper wire, is in contact with a semiconductor, in this case a piece of germanium, conductivity is less in one direction than the other. This characteristic of semiconductors was exploited in the early days of radio to make excellent radio detectors using lead sulfide or silicon. When these semiconductors were touched with a fine wire called a cat's whisker, they changed the incoming high-frequency signal to a low-frequency signal, which could then be heard with earphones. And cat's whisker rectifiers were reactivated during World War II for microwave radar. Even though semiconductors were being used, they were not fully understood. Thus, after the war, Bell Telephone Laboratories intensified the investigation of semiconductors with a hope for understanding. This experiment was the key that led to the invention of the transistor.
The transistor is a truly remarkable device. One of its features is its ability to perform at very low power levels.
This tiny electronic device is the outcome of scientific research by trained men dedicated to understanding, working in an environment which fosters the uninhibited search for answers to riddles of science which are related to communications needs. For their discovery of the transistor effect, John Bardeen, Walter Brattain, and William Shockley in 1956 shared the highest honor in science, the Nobel Prize.